changed world. As always, there will be an open part of the discussion and the closed discussion with the representatives of the politological community. On the 25th of May, in the name of the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, there will be a solemn session with the African Corps dedicated to the annual Day of Africa, celebrated all over the world. This is a celebration that symbolizes the victory of the continent in their fight for independence and their striving for peace, unity, and unity. This day, in the 1963, in the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, 32 independent African states signed the Charter of the Organization of African Unity. This was the start of the way of Africa for political and economic integration. The good tradition of this association, continued by African Union, that represents the collective interests of the continent on the international arena, contributes to turning it into independent and influential center of world politics. Our country provided full and unconditional support to the national liberation movements in Africa, contributed to strengthening sovereignty of young states, their social economic development, and today Russian-African relations, our cooperation demonstrates progressive dynamics. We always prioritize expanding multi-phase cooperation with this continent. Let's speak about the relevant agenda. Ukraine. The Kiev neo-Nazi regime, with support of NATO countries, continues attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure of our country, including cruise missiles, long-range rocket, artillery. At the same time, Kiev is openly glad by the hunt started by the AFU militants against women, children and elderly, the attacks on residential houses and social facilities. Zelensky brags cynically before his foreign masters about these terrorist attacks, blatantly saying that there will be new long-range sanctions against Russia, and is escalating the conflict. But he forgets to mention, but I do not think that, I think he should mention it, because first of all, they're targeting civilians. Usually, Ukraine was saying they were trying to be part of the West because they they're striving for democracy, for liberty, for human rights. Well, over the last week, the shellings and strikes of Ukro-Nazis UAVs affected 234 Russian citizens, 203 killed, 203 injured, 18 children included, 31 people killed, including 2 kids. Specific facts over the regions. The Belgrade region, from the 15th to the 20th of May, AFU strikes affected 5 people, 19 injured, including a 14-year-old boy. Bryansk region, the 15th, 20th of May, the attacks affected 6 civilians. DPR, 5 people killed, a teenager of 2010, 17 injured, including a kid of 2013. The 14th of May, the Zaporizhia region, a school was attacked in the city of Vasilievka, but there was no detonation. On the 14th, 18th of May, the shellings and attacks of Ukrainian UAVs affected the territory of Zaporizhia and PP. 2 employees were injured, and their evacuation was not possible because of the multiple strikes by the AFU. A transport shop was affected as several buses. From the 16th to the 17th of May, in the cities of Dnepropetrovsk and Energodar, the strikes of Ukrainian UAVs affected a playground and the kindergarten. Where are all those European parliamentaries that were always concerned with the human rights, but they don't know anything about this? They don't know what their money is used for. The regimes of those countries who form part of the European Parliament. Kursk region, 15th to 20th of May, 3 people killed, 9 people injured. Elpia, the 18th of May, as a result of the strike of Ukrainian UAV, against a regular minibus in Lysychansk. A 17-year-old girl was killed, 2 people injured. Moscow and Moscow region, the 17th of May, a mass attack of UAVs against residential houses. 3 people killed, including an Indian citizen, 4 people injured. In Moscow, 12 builders from the Moscow refinery injured. Ryazan region, 15th of May, an attack an apartment building of Ukrainian UAVs. 4 people killed, including a child. 28 injured, including 4 kids. Kherson region, from the 15th to the 20th of May, everyday attacks of the AFU killed 3 people, 5 injured, including the head of the Skadovsky municipal district, Alexander Dudka. All of them will be held responsible because this is terrorism. This is not just a criminal act. Russian law enforcement organs continue gathering evidence to responsibilize the heads of Ukraine, the AFU, and foreign militants for the committed crimes. 12 years of sentence were given to Roman Chebanenko, the head of the detention facility in the city of Kropivnitsky, who was not implementing the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war of 1949 and was physically abusing the Russian prisoners of war, and he is internationally wanted. The 17 and 13 years of sentence in absentia were given to the Sweden and British militants Nils Daniel Dahlgren and Simon William Dalby. They are also internationally wanted. Life sentences in absentia were given for the crimes in 2023-2025 in the Kursk and Belgorodsk region to the Ukrainian militants Alexander Borsh, Oleg Patrick, and Dmitry Primakov. 14-year sentence was given to Andrei Tsit. Terrorist crimes committed an organized group since 2022 to 2023 in Ryazan region against the facilities of the Ministry of Defense of Russia and railway. 30 years were given in absentia to the citizen of Ukraine, Artem Klassen. 23 years of prison for the crimes committed in 2019-2022. The person giving orders about artillery strikes against civilian sector of DPR, Ukrainian terrorist Alexander Lutsenko, and all of them are internationally wanted. And you can see what Zelensky is doing amongst all of this. Yesterday, on the 20th of May, it was 7 years since the inauguration of Zelensky. In 2019, he was presented at the elections and won under the motto of the restoration of peace, justice, fight against corruption. Just remember, during the election campaign at the beginning of his presidential mandate, Zelensky made a lot of encouraging statements, giving hope for people, and people gave him his votes. At the time, people were very tired of fratricidal war unleashed by the victors of Maidan. They were tired of infringement of the rights of the Russian-speaking people, persecution of the canonical Orthodox Church, rewriting of history, turning Ukraine into anti-Russia. They believed in Zelensky and his whole team that tried to persuade them that they are going to restore peace, restore justice, and they will restore law and order. They return Ukraine to normality. But I'll remind what Zelensky said when he was entering his duties. I'm not afraid of making complicated decisions, Zelensky said. I'm ready to lose my popularity, my rating, if it is necessary, without any hesitation, said Zelensky. I'm ready to lose my position so that there was peace. But today, all those words clearly have turned into something absolutely opposing that is a mockery of everything that he was promising. He's clinging to his position, to everything that could preserve his power, but not for peace, but for war. Today, it's absolutely clear that all the election promisings of Zelensky was a cynical lie and a young promising. so-called president of peace turned into a bloody usurper. The corruption in Ukraine has become a byword. It penetrates the whole system of power in Ukraine, including the close circle of Zelensky and he himself. At the same time, ordinary Ukrainians die in butchers' assaults. For what? For golden toilets of Timur Mindich or elite jewelry of Yelena Zelenskaya. So that all this bunch of people in Ukraine could go abroad and have fun there, so that they would transfer millions or even billions of finances that were stolen for the future of their...
Видимо, проживать точно не на Украине, как они же сами, об этом теперь уже не стесняясь, говорят, как бы насмехаясь над теми гражданами Украины, которым выпала иная участь. В интервью ведущим западным СМИ во время избирательной кампании Зеленский тогда говорил, опять же, прямая цитата, статья 10 Конституции Украины, украинский язык, государственный язык, страна и
perhaps even illegally, and immediately receive temporary protection. And that's the reason why the European Union has made so many statements about human rights. But now, information about the pantheon of eminent Ukrainians being created in Ukraine. We have already mentioned this intention to create this so-called pantheon. It was not a joke on the 1st of April, at our 1st of April briefing, no. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has identified 98 such burials in 21 countries. This includes the Ukrainian People's Republic, the West Ukrainian People's Republic, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. So all that scum, Nazi scum, will be collected all over the world in order to become a part of glory, materialized glory on the territory of current Ukraine. According to Ukrainian media, recently, exhumation in Clairvaux, Luxembourg, the process has already started. So people, initially from Ukraine, writers, painters, poets, public figures, their monuments are destroyed. The memory plugs are destroyed. Just have a look. Odessa, the monument to those who have created this city, it has been destroyed. Some neo-Nazi medals are made from the material of this monument. But that Nazi scum, memory plugs are installed and their remains are collected all over the world. And Ukrainians will be made to pray for their ashes. It was about Colonel Yevgeny Konovalets, who is buried in Rotterdam in one of the cemeteries. Zelensky couldn't resist expressing his enthusiasm on this occasion. He said that a moral duty of Kiev is to return home the ashes of Ukrainian heroes who, it's a direct quote, defended the idea of independence, fought for Ukraine's statehood and were buried outside its borders. But they also killed people on national grounds. Zelensky obviously forgot to mention that. I'm sure that soon it will come to reburial of Stepan Bandera in Ukraine. But not a piece of advice, but a demand by Kiev regime. Do not forget Khanka. Just prepare a special place in this pantheon to him. It will be a pearl, obviously, of this hell alley of anti-glory. Against the background of a new round of corruption scandals surrounding Zelensky in a Sokol and forced mobilization, Bankova is clearly attempting to calm the flames by redirecting public attention to the sacred figures of Ukrainian neo-Nazism, thereby trying to raise morale in the army and patriotism among the population, encouraging them to unite in the name of an uncompromising, as they have said, fight against Russia, and to honorably rebury those figures in the aforementioned pantheon. I would like to once again emphasize that this place is unlikely to be revered by the residents of Ukraine. Their ancestors fell victim to the terror of aggressive Ukrainian nationalists, who repeatedly betrayed their compatriots and loyally served their oppressors. The above facts confirm the urgency of the task of denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine and the elimination of threats from its territory. All these goals will certainly be achieved. as the Russian government has stated on many occasions. So now Tulsi Gabbard has made statements about examination, investigation into biological laboratories. How many do you think are located on the territory of Ukraine? I would remind you 40. Over 40 biolaboratories are situated in the Ukrainian territory. We have repeatedly drawn attention to the international community's attention to the dangerous and unregulated U.S. military biological activities outside of its territory, including in Ukraine. Pentagon military biological programs on Ukrainian territory in violation of the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. We have mentioned this issue during our briefings and briefings by the Russian Ministry of Defense, thanks to Igor Kirillov. And investigation into circumstances connected with biological laboratories by American specialists, and the Parliamentary Commission has studied all the available sources. Also received during the special military operation and the affiliated structure of Ukrainian biological laboratories. Russia has initiated a consultative meeting on Article 5 of the BTWC. It's about a meeting in Geneva on the 5th, 9th of September 2022, as well as discussions on this topic at the UN Security Council. And the 9th BTWC Review Conference in Geneva in November 28, December 16, 2022. Allegedly, it's about disinformation. No, there is no disinformation. The Americans, they will be checking that. That's what this civilized international community, it has denied that before. It's about a comprehensive resolution of the problem, and the Russian side has consistently called for that in recent years. We will continue our work within relevant multilateral forums, primarily within the BTWC, including in close proximity to the Russian territory. And now about the financing of all those atrocities in Ukraine by the Westerners. We have received many questions on the reinvestment of the so-called frozen Russian assets. 6.6 billion euros have been transferred by Brussels to the Kiev regime since February 2024, and in July Brussels intends to replenish the Ukrainian budget by another 1.4 billion euros. I would underline that any transactions concerning our assets without Russia's consent are illegal. What the European Commission is doing is blatant robbery, and any attempts to whitewash it with some pseudo-legal invented formulas and mottos are unfounded. Profits from transactions with Russian reserves are solely due to the freezing of funds de facto seized from our country without trial, without any legal basis. All those involved in this sordid affair will inevitably be held accountable for their deeds. Frozen Russian assets proceeds are not being used for social needs, but primarily to support the Kiev junta. It's sponsoring terrorist crimes, including the targeted detonation of explosive devices in public places, the murder of civilians, and the bombing of critical civilian infrastructure not only in Russia but also abroad. The Kiev regime not only fails to investigate terrorist crimes and to hold those responsible accountable, but deliberately creating a safe haven for terrorists on its territory. I would remind you, it's the bombing of the Crimean Bridge. 5 civilians were killed. Car bombing in the Moscow region where Daria Dugina was killed. Detonation of an explosive device at the street food bar in St. Petersburg where journalist Vladimir Tatarsky, Maxim Fomin, was killed. The so-called Russian Volunteer Corps terrorist organization attack in the Bryansk and Belgorod regions in the 2nd of March 2023 and May 22, 2023, respectively. The car bombing where right and public figure Yevgeny Prilepin was attacked and injured, and his driver Alexander Shubin killed. Terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall in Krasnogorsk, which killed 145 civilians and injured over 550 civilians. Neo-Nazi battalion's crimes in the Kursk region, including the murder of 22 civilians in Ruskaya Perechная. It has become a revelation for the international community. Such an atrocity is possible in the 21st century. Multiple terrorist attacks against the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Energodar, Zaporozhye Oblast, including artillery, missile shootings, unmanned aerial vehicles attack, posing a risk of nuclear catastrophe, attack against Metagas LNG tanker near the coast of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. All the mentioned and many other, it's just not a full, not a comprehensive, but a symbolic list. And other terrorist crimes. Russian investigative bodies have opened and investigated criminal cases. Evidence has been obtained on the implication of citizens. Verdicts have been issued on some cases. I would like to draw your attention that the Federal Republic of Germany informed the UN Security Council of the US arrest of the Ukrainian citizen suspected of involvement in the bombing of the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2. Another suspect was not extradited but by Poland and has fled to Ukraine. Ukraine has been presented with claims based on the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism and the International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings. So any use of frozen Russian assets for terrorism should be regarded as terrorist financing. And it's a direct violation of the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism and the International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings. Apart from terrorism financing and other international crimes, it's also about a violation of sovereign immunity of state property, which stems from the principle of the sovereign equality of states, Article 2, Paragraph 1 of the UN Charter. And any sponsoring acts of genocide, terrorism, other international crimes committed by Ukrainian citizens. We will make the relevant claims about them, and we will demand compensation for the damage caused to our country in accordance with international law. On the 15th of May, the Moscow Arbitration Court supported the claim by the Bank of Russia for damages amounting to 18.17 trillion rubles for the unlawful blocking of domestic assets by the Belgian depository Euroclear. We are satisfied with this decision. Now let us move on and discuss the situation in Moldova. It is looking more and more like absolute destabilization, with long-standing goals set by the pro-Romanian leaders of this country. But why pro-Romanian? Romanian because Sandu has the citizenship and passport of Romania. Sandu called Russia an aggressor and the most serious threat to the continent's security in the decades to come. Allegedly, our country launches drones on sleeping civilians, targets hospitals, schools, and power plants. So I would like to ask, is she not insane? Our ambassador, Oleg Ozerov, was summoned to the Moldovan Foreign Ministry regarding the illegal flight of an unmanned aerial vehicle through the Moldovan airspace. But why I question the sanity of Maria Sandu? Which drone exactly flew over the territory of Moldova? There is no word Russian UAV there and there is no proof at all. Just they detected something flying, and Russia is to blame, of course. They have used this drone hysteria in order to justify actions against our country aimed at reformatting the republic according to so-called Euro standards. It's not Euro standards, it's hellish mobilization, militarization of Western Europe in connection with the propaganda they are carrying out by voluntarily making people to believe in some aggression by Russia. And that story about alleged European standards is not about Euro standards and not adopting their own standards to some European Union standards. It's about mobilization of resources of Moldova, not for the interests of the Moldovan people, but for those who rule in Brussels. They have taken the decision of the closing of cultural centers, forcing us to close the Russian house in Chisinau. It is presented as a response to the alleged violation of Moldovan airspace by drones. And this includes discrimination against Russian passport holders entering the Republic. Those people are subjected to long-hour screening procedures and inspections and interrogations. They are denied consular assistance, and in this regard we once again strongly recommend to carefully consider the risks and assess whether it is advisable to visit Moldova. It's not safe.
The deputies of the parties, the Action and the Solidarity, adopted in the first reading the amendments to the Code of the Structure and Functioning of the Parliament. That includes the fact that the legislative acts are not going to be translated into the Russian language. On the 9th of May, the authorities of Moldova refused the patriotic forces of the country to start the March of Victory and the Immortal Regiment on the central square of the Moldovan capital. These were not pro-Russian acts. These were acts organized by the veterans of Moldova in honor of those ancestors who protected Moldova from fascism and Nazism during the Second World War. Well, they were refused. There was organized the Day of Europe. According to the media, there were not many people. Many of them came for the record. Even the order sent by the Ministry of Education of Moldavia to educational institutions with a requirement for the history teachers together with their pupils to come. But it didn't help because the teachers of history know the history of Moldova and they want their pupils to become zombies because of this propaganda trash. There is active condoning of the rewriting of history. On the 9th of May in the village of Kushmirka on the region of Shulda Nesht, there was a monument inaugurated which is called the Well of Heroes Reintegrators, or well. And I think all his ancestors and Platonov and Saltykov-Shchedrin, they have nothing, they cannot nothing say about this name. I think Bulgakov could compete, but it's not a fact. The monument is called the Well of Heroes Reintegrators in the memory of the soldiers of the army of Antonescu that died in the battles for the liberation of Bessarabia from the Soviet occupation in July 1941. The cynicism is that under the guise of restoration of this monument, not only the name was changed, but the nature of the monument. It was inaugurated in 1937. It was a Well of Heroes dedicated to the people died in the First World War. Is it normal? Just when we are speaking about distorting the historical memory, this is not a metaphor, this is a fact. This is the distortion of history. On the 19th of May, the President of Moldavia, Maria Zakharova, received in Strasbourg European Order, the Order for Merits. Usually it is given for the merits, for national merits, but Moldavia is not the motherland for Maria Sandu. She has the citizenship of Romania. And what are the merits? Surrendering the sovereignty of the country, destroying its economy, fighting against any type of dissidence, rewriting of history. These are merits, but this has nothing to do with Moldova. Under the pretext of fighting for their re-entering the EU, well, EU is based on other values, and all of this under the pretext of fighting the non-existent Russian threat. It is curious that, according to the media, while Maia Sandu was speaking in the Euro Parliament, the ex-deputy of the Parliament of Romania called her a dictator that is covering up for drug mafia. Well, apparently the lawlessness committed by the Moldavian authorities causes repulsion even in the EU. Moldovan people find forces to fight against the destructive policy, and the day of victory in the Great Patriotic War was celebrated widely in Moldova. There were celebration, patriotic acts, concert in Chisinau. The Immortal Regiment united more than 30,000 people, and in Transnistria more than 105,000 of grateful descendants of heroes anti-fascists. And the future of Moldova is in their hands, but not in hands of Sandu or those who receive medals for their merits, not before their own motherland. I would like to speak about other topics that are also very relevant and cause a lot of questions among the media. I would like to speak about Cuba. Cuba is subject to gross economic pressure by the U.S. The new restrictions introduced in May this year against the companies of third countries that work on the Liberty Island is another round of the pressure policy by Washington. The main target is the economic suffocation of the country. The attempts of the White House administration to tighten the sanction noose around Cuba, together with the many years of trade, economic, financial, humanitarian, and the fuel and energy blockade, is a direct reflection of the intolerance of Washington to any type of dissidence, cynical embodiment of reanimated Monroe Doctrine. Where are the human rights? Where is respect for people? Where the liberty of freedom of expression? Where is all of this? Where are any elementary notions? I'm not speaking about morale, but I'm speaking about that you cannot do just what you want. There is law, there is order that restricts this lawlessness. I'm sure that the heroic Cuban people that demonstrated loyalty to the ideals of freedom, independence, social justice showed wonderful resistance and courage in the face of challenges, will preserve its unity, and the firmness of spirit will protect its national interests. We stand in full solidarity with Cuba, and we condemn any attempts of interference into internal affairs of the sovereign states, intimidation, or use of illegal, unilateral, or restrictive measures, blackmail, and threats. We will support actively our brotherly Cuban people in this complicated period, and Habana was informed about the modalities of all of this. Japan. On the 12th of May, the Foreign Minister of Japan, Motegi, said that the relations with Russia are important, but they're not going to change anti-Russian foreign policy course. So the dismantlement of the positive baggage accumulated over the time of bilateral ties was started by initiative of Japan. Without any foundations, they linked the further cooperation with our country with the situation around Ukraine, not under the pressure of their own people, but under the pressure of Washington. To return to normal interstate relations, Tokyo should take practical steps that confirm their abandonment of the current hostile policy without any link to what is happening thousands of kilometers away from Japan on the territory of Ukraine. And before the 81st anniversary of victory, we received information the bilateralist crimes committed by Tokyo. This is confirmed. The results of the Khabarovsk process. The General Prosecutor's Office in March, April this year officially informed about the sentence to 55 Japanese citizens, and the full text will be published on our website. All those people whose names are going to be given there participated in the subversive spy activities on the Soviet Union. Those in those lists were killing prisoners of war, were using violence against them. They were engaging in banditism in the 1945. After the review of these constitutional decisions, it was confirmed that these people cannot be rehabilitated, and their blame is fully confirmed. We will continue our work on the crimes of the militarist Japan. In May this year, in Blagoveshchensk, there was an exchange of archived documents between Russia and China. The solemn ceremony related to the actions of the Regiment 731 was conducted in the context of the 16th Scientific Conference between Russia and China about the prospects of further development. The documents were presented by the director of the research center that is working of the Regiment 731. There is information about this Regiment 731, the list of the people, and these materials are going to be used in research, and they will be open for historians, researchers. The head of the historical memory before the President of Russia, Elena Malasheva, gave their Chinese colleagues the information about genocide against the genocide of Soviet citizens. The documents of the Khabarovsk process reflect what happened what happened at the time and the results of this process. With the support of regional government, there was a special exhibition opened dedicated to the victory in the Far East. It unites different documents from the Russian and foreign museums that tells about the plans of militaries Japan to colonize Russian lands, as well as about the military crimes of militaries Japan, about bacteriological weapons created by Japan, and or inhumane crimes against the Soviet people. And we're going to publish the information on our website. The previous briefings we spoke about, or answered the questions about the use of information technologies, cyber fraud, because that is disseminating very actively. We were speaking about Southeast Asia. There is the problem of the so-called fraudulent centers, and people are forced to work in these centers, people from different countries, including Russia. The activity of such centers was registered in Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand. Thanks to the coordinated rapid work of the Embassy of Russia in Myanmar and the Ministry of the Interior of Russia, together with local authorities, on the 5th of May, the employees of Russian Embassy in Thailand received 2 citizens of Russia that were liberated from the fraudulent call centers on the territory of Myanmar for their further transfer to the Russian Federation. I would like to use this opportunity to call
относиться к информации, которая, как правило, публикуется в сети интернет, в мессенджерах относительно набора сотрудников на высокооплачиваемые должности в сферах туризма, как это преподносится, бизнес.
speeches, and representatives of foreign and Russian media need to be accredited. There will be a link in the text version of the briefing. The deadline for accreditation is today. It's very important today. That is the deadline on the 21st of May. If you want to make your reports, please hurry up. The link will be available in the text version of this briefing. And I'm ready to answer your questions. Is International Life with us? Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Is International Life with us? I cannot hear you. I see you, but I think I cannot hear you. Is the International Life not with us? So let us move on then. We will go back to the International Life a little bit later. Is it Zvestia with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions. The first one was the assessment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the West response to Sarmat testing. And the second question is about a call to Transnistria residents to be cautious and not to hurry in receiving Russian passports. So will Moldovan authorities put obstacles to this process, in your opinion? So let us start with your first question. Information about the testing of Sarmat was made public by Sergei Karakayev in his report to the President Vladimir Putin. Those tests have been planned, and additionally you can address the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, and I think everything has been stated in the report to the President. Now about the second question. Let us start from the beginning. On the 15th of May, President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, signed a decree on citizenship for Transnistria residents. It was for the aspirations of many Transnistria citizens, residents, and it's connected with reckless actions by official Chisinau governed by Sandu. This multinational region connected with solid historical ties to Russia. It's inappropriate. Such a reaction and such statements, they should be treated as statements by insane people. And as for the threats voiced by Zelensky, he has mentioned the possibility of forced action against Transnistria. He's threatening everyone, the entire world, not only the residents of Transnistria, but also the Eurasian space. And he thinks he governs the god and holds him. But it's not the god, of course. And he has not got his beard, of course, but he's holding something strongly. So the head of the Kiev regime intends by himself or together with Moldova, that's his statements, he intends to deal with Transnistria. And we would like to warn any aggression against our compatriots in Transnistria will be we will respond immediately and adequately. The Russian Federation is ready to use all the means for ensuring their security. Now about the statements by the Moldovan Prime Minister. who has called upon residents of Transnistria to be cautious and not rush to obtain Russian passports. So they like to dwell on the topic of human rights and freedoms in Tiraspol, and they interpret this topic in some one-sided manner. And this warning by Alexander Munteanu, it reveals the true attitude of the Moldovan authorities towards the legitimate, inalienable rights of Transnistrians. They should decide for themselves which citizenship to acquire. And it's a caricature, because Maria Zakharova herself has a citizenship of another country, and she has not abandoned it. So the Transnistria citizens, they should decide for themselves which citizenship they need. Additionally, which citizenship they would like to require. That's it. So we move on. Is Ria Novosti with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova, Christine Rodriguez, Ria Novosti. We have 2 questions today, if you allow me. Thank you very much. The first one, how would you comment the entry into force of the agreement between the government of the Russian Federation and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on mutual visa-free regime to honor the 100-year anniversary of relations between the 2 countries? Yes, actually on the 19th of February 2026 it has been a memorable date, 100-year anniversary of the diplomatic relations, and our country was the first to admit the Kingdom of Hijaz, Nejd, and other regions that have joined the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Our relations are of strategic nature. It's a true partnership, reliable partnership, and mutually taking into account each other's interests. And on the 11th of May, the agreement between the government of the Russian Federation and the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on a visa-free regime entered into force. It was signed on the sidelines of the Joint Intergovernmental Commission on Trade and Economic and Scientific Technical Cooperation in Riyadh on the 1st of December 2025. It's about 90 days visa-free mutual stay without employment and without residing on the territory of the state. And regarding Hajj pilgrimage, visa regime remains, and such pilgrimage visas should be obtained only through accredited agencies according to the established quotas. And if you allow me, the second question, it's quite a large question, but it's important. Bloggers from 20 countries participated in a blogger tour for historical event sites, Königsberg Storm route, and flowers have been laid to the unknown soldier graves, and many mass media platforms just refuse to broadcast such events. So bloggers, they just become not only guests but soldiers of information front, I would say. So I would like to learn in detail how the Foreign Ministry of Russia interacts with young people in conveying information to the international audience. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have prepared a special material in case of a question. Because there are many interesting facts, I would try to find it. Just a second, please. If I cannot find it, yes, I have found it. So I would not I would not repeat some banal things about preserving the memory of our ancestors, working with young people. I would like just to cite the facts in this context. This participation, upholding the truth, it's done by our colleagues from different organizations, young people for the victory, and it's not some tourist event or some formal story. It's just really a deep study of history. So the total audience is more than 20 million subscribers. And the first route from the 9th to the 12th of May, it was in the Kaliningrad territory. It's the heritage of the Great Victory. The bloggers have walked through the route of the storm of Königsberg, the citadel that the Hitlerites have considered impossible to be conquered. But our warriors have proved the opposite. So it was a program for 14 African bloggers, Poklonная Mountain, Victory Museum, the Open Sky Museum of the Second World War equipment, and the grave of the unknown soldier, the main square, flowers, as honoring the memory of those who have perished in the fight against Nazism. So such a youth diplomacy for preserving historical memory. And our foreign guests will further have a new chance to know in real time the history and culture of our country. And young people will travel through the regions of Russia. Because when young people just ask questions, there is a hope that it will not be cancelled and the historical memory will not be totally erased. We will preserve the historical memory together on the Great Patriotic War time by all the means available to us. Thank you. Is R.T. Balkan with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions. Recently, apart from the Hungarian mall company, there have been some buyers of the Russian share in the oil industry of Serbia. So what's the attitude of Moscow to those Serbian buyers who have proposed to buy the Russian share in the Serbian oil industry? So taking into account that last year the British ambassador in Serbia publicly said that it's an obvious solution. Yes, actually, the negotiations are underway, and the Russian-Serbian intergovernmental agreement has been signed in 2008. So let us not pay attention to speculations that surround this issue. We need to be based on the comments of the officials who within whose scope the negotiations lie, and it's about supplying the necessary energy resources to the economy of Serbia, and our specialists of the relevant structures actively participate in this negotiations process. So the second question.
So there was another decision passed about the refusal to liberate the Bosnian Serbian general Ratko Mladic. Well, I would like. What could you say about this? Well, I would like to remind that Ratko Mladic is bedridden, is on the brink of life and death. On the 10th of April, he had a stroke, and now he feels even worse. He needs specialized help. All of this happens amidst the lack of necessary medical care in the penitentiary institution in The Hague. This demonstrates the inhumane nature of the mechanism and anti-Serbian nature. There are serious systemic problems related to the elementary principles of humanity, impartiality, and just attitude to the convicts. The representatives of the collective West like to go all over the world and teach everyone how to treat the prisoners. They publish reports. They organize press conferences nearby the prisons, other penitentiary structures, complaining about the countries, blaming the regimes, mocking everything. Well, I'm just interested. All these structures, NGOs that monitor the treatment of prisoners in penitentiary bodies, all of these Euro parliaments, Brussels endless special envoys, where are all of them? Don't they want to come to The Hague and look at the conditions in which Ratko Mladic is being in? All of this can be seen. Well, but they are not interested in it. The mechanism does not deny serious deteriorating state of the prisoner, but they need to show special attention to him. But what is the kind of intention? I'm interested in this type of segregation, why some people can receive all the possible comfortable conditions, whatever their crimes. I'm not even going to give examples, but others cannot receive even minimal medical care. They do not, the mechanism doesn't hide that there are precedents of giving freedom to someone because of their medical conditions, but there are no conditions for Ratko Mladic to be liberated, because as I said, according to the mechanisms, they need to show special attention to this situation. In Russian we say, this is different. He is being provided, supposedly, with necessary care and maximum possible comfort. But not everyone thinks the same way. In this regard, the decision of the mechanism focuses on the necessity to condemn the actions committed by Ratko Mladic. That is why the demonstrative punishment is more important than humanity. That was always supposedly an important part of their own mindset and international justice in general. So in fact, this is a demonstrative torture of terminally ill person. So they're not even hiding this segregational nature of their actions. We will react to this outrageous case of demonstrative punishment in the Security Council and the UN General Assembly. We'll dwell on it in June during the review of the actions of this so-called mechanism. According to the UNSC resolutions, we will insist on closing this, in fact, punitive structure. Let's continue. Sputnik, Moldova. Are you here? Good afternoon, Ms. Zakharova. Yes, we're here. Hello. Kisilov Ilya, Sputnik, Moldova. Well, I have a question. The President of Moldova, Maria Zakharova, after receiving the European order, gave an interview to Deutsche Welle and answered several questions. She once again spoke about the possibility of entering the EU through the unity with Romania. How can you comment on this? Well, while you're speaking about some unknown merits, the merits of Maia Sandu are well known. The deprivation of Moldova of its sovereignty and putting Moldavian people and Moldova into Romania despite the interests of the citizens of Moldova. But these are not merits before Moldova, but before the institutions and bodies that brought her to power in Chisinau, and sponsoring her and condoning her will continue to reach the necessary assessments of this clearly anti-democratic acts of what is happening under the edges of the EU in Moldova. This should be correctly assessed. That is why I think that we have dwelled upon this topic very in detail in the first part of my briefing, but I have additionally answered your question. Thank you. Thank you. Ukraina Ru, are you with us? Yes, we're here. Thank you for the opportunity to ask you a question. I have two questions. Anna Cherkasova is my name. First question. President Putin issued a law about simplified admission to the Russian citizenship for the people of from Transnistria that caused reaction in Kiev and the EU. So many are speaking about the possibility of peaceful solution without escalation. Can people there listen to us? Can they hear Russian diplomats, or this is one-side play? Who are you speaking about? Well, I'm speaking about Europe and Moldova. Well, I think that people in Moldova and Transnistria can hear us. That is why there were steps taken for the aspirations and desires of the people who live there. And of course, we hear and we see what is happening. We know that we are heard and they appeal to us. That is not something that was invented by Moscow for the benefit of someone of our own interests. This is a response to the requests, many years of requests that were coming from the people living in this country and in this region. As for the EU, this is not the issue of some physical shortcoming that they cannot hear us. This is the impartiality. Speaking about the Brussels bureaucracy, they instructed to be implementing such a policy. We can say that they're ill-educated or have no experience or bad professionals, but this was the goal, so that there was no conscience starting to function at any stage, so that they could implement such destructive policy for Europe itself. There is nothing to prove. This policy is aimed at de-escalating the conflict potential. The people, the citizens of the Western Europe hear it, and you should have no doubts about it. They listen to us, and they hope that the history with the Western Europe of the 1930s will not repeat in the 21st century. They fight for it. There are no questions about this. Thank you. And the second question, what would you say about the Russian exposition at the 61st Venice Biennale? Well, this is an issue of how some people don't want to hear or listen, but the others want to see and want to hear, and do and take great pains to influence the situation. I'm going to find the information that I prepared for this, because I think that is the story that should be described in textbooks, because the way it was developing was in fact very dynamic and dramatic sometimes. Truly, I think that it was self-revealing for those people in the West who were trying to thwart it. Just a moment, I'm going to find it. Just a second. I would like to inform you that we are preparing a publication of a detailed material on the Venice Biennale and the Russian participation in it and what happened around it. I would like to create a separate material about this so that the people reading us and listening to us could see the materials that were presented by Russia at Biennale. And I would like to give links to the necessary resources. So briefly, I'm going to speak about this, but I will provide a detailed material. In Europe, as you know, there is anti-Russian hysteria that is being unbridled. The people that are promoting it have been instructed to do this. They're trying to cancel Russian culture. Well, it is not being spoken about openly because they understand that it sounds in the context of absolute neo-barbarism. But they do everything they can, take great pains to disrupt expositions and other cultural events. But Russia participated, even partially, in the 61st Venice Biennale. The Brussels and Italian Russophobes did everything with the support of Ukrainian radicals and religious extremists to prevent the opening of Russian exposition in the context of the preview of Biennale. Our delegation received open threats. There was a real danger for harsh provocations. The organizers of the festival were under unprecedented pressure to prevent at any cost the return of Russian modern art to Venice. Well, the place where the Russian exposition was organized was not given for us for free. It was not it wasn't that we took somebody's place. It is our building. It belongs to our country. Everything that was done to prepare this exposition, as always, was done strictly according to the charter, to the norms and regulations and tradition of this cultural event. We always thought that this event is an event dedicated to culture, but those Russophobes and nationalists and neo-Nazis, in fact, see the Venice Biennale, as many others corresponding events, as a platform for implementing anti-culture, to cancel not only our culture, but their own culture as well, because when they were jumping outrageously, insulting everyone, preventing people from coming there, this is not culture. There is a thing that we say in any language. They were showing their lack of culture, the fact that they have no culture. And the scale of it was, in fact, an element of true neo-barbarism. We thank the Italian administration that listened to us and took all the measures to ensure the security of Russian delegation at the exposition. It is very interesting that everything happened in the opposing way. All those who wanted to cancel Russian culture, in fact, they created more interest for the Russian culture. This artificially created fuss around the Russian participation in Biennale was a bad service for anti-Russian forces. Their attacks had an opposing result. They attracted to this topic the attention of the local and the world community. The constructively speaking Italian cultural and intellectual circles were mobilized, and they decisively supported the administration of Biennale and depoliticized approach to the art, but they also turned their eye to the degradation of bilateral Russian-Italian relations and the situation in the sphere of security in Europe in the context of Ukrainian crisis. They said directly that they were ashamed about what is happening in the center of Europe. One of the reflections of this activity is something that I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you a quote. On the 1st of May, there was an open letter published under the title "No to War with Russia." Who signed it? A group of Italian intellectuals, political activists, literators, ex-parliamentarians, diplomats, artists, writers, musicians, teachers of universities, cinema professionals, more than 60 people. So let's see who is on which side. Not on the side of Russia, but on the side of those who are saying that culture cannot be cancelled because it reflects the life with all its reflection of peace and war, suffer and struggle, victory and advance. The cancelling of culture is cancelling of civilization in general. And on this side, we see the figures that with their life received the right to be called the cultural figures because they have artistic works that are created, musical works created. They have experience and who is on the side of those who are trying to cancel culture? I don't know what to call them. Orcs, some godless people that did nothing, but only some destructive acts that were financed specifically based on the logic of total, constant, endless destruction of everything. This is what we can see. In this letter, they speak about the danger for Italy to continue the conflict in Ukraine because Rome is directly involved in it with the supply of weapons, uncontrolled receipt of refugees, and Ukrainization of foreign policy. They categorically disagree with the decision of Italian government to provide a new irretrievable tranche for Ukraine by the request of Zelensky and the signing of agreement on the production of UAV for AFU in Italy. This Russophobic madness is what the official circles in Italy and Europe are living in right now. There is a question for the Italian media, for Italian journalists. Everything what I'm saying. Would you like to speak honestly about this? Were you banned to do it? If you were banned, it is not our problem. It is your problem. This is your European famous, notorious European democracy, your values, they were taken from you. This is your decision. So we are going to publish material about this. It is going to be a general with photos, with links, so you could see what was presented at the Russian exposition at the Venice Biennale. Let's follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Is China Media Corporation with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. We have some problems with the internet. Please excuse me. If you do not object, I will turn off the video. We have two questions. One of the topics has been discussed many times on multiple occasions, but however, there was a visit, official state visit by the Russian president to China, high-level talks held in Beijing, two sides having signed a joint statement, launch of the Years of Education announced. What prospects for interaction does it open? So I would say that for me, as an official, it's not ethical to make assessments about the role of the leaders. It will be assessed by the history. And you have heard a statement by the Russian president of high-ranking Russian delegation members. And there were characteristics in foreign media outlets prepared the visit prepared hastily due to the recently concluded Chinese-US summit negotiations. So it's just a mockery, disinformation, mocking their own audience. Because it's a real speculation, disinformation, it's a fake. That link our bilateral dialogue with China with what is happening in the relations between the US and China. They just do not understand the nature of China-US relations. It's not some sacred knowledge passed on between diplomats and political scientists. Everyone is aware that the visit by the US president has been questioned for a long time, and first it was planned for April, then shifted to May, and the complex situation in the Gulf and the visit by President Putin was initially planned beforehand for a long time and thoroughly. The visit linked to two anniversaries for our country. 30th anniversary of the establishment of the strategic partnership between Russia and China, and the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Good Neighborliness, Friendship and Cooperation. The meetings took place in the atmosphere of friendship and trust. Putin and Xi held talks and signed statements on deepening relations of good neighborliness, friendship and cooperation. A joint declaration on the establishment of a multipolar world and a new type of international relations was adopted. We will cite and post links to those documents in the text version of the briefing. So it was about 40 documents in total. Friendship and the entire range of bilateral cooperation, and the leaders of Russia and China solemnly announced the extension of the document for another 5-year period. The driving force in the political dialogue is there is not an assessment, but it has been underlined as leaders' diplomacy, friendly relations between Vladimir Putin and Chairman Xi Jinping, apart from negotiations, the heads of state had the opportunity to discuss the most pressing international issues with a cup of tea in a one-on-one format, and the relations are of unprecedentedly high level and demonstrate stability and resilience to external shocks. They are self-sufficient, independent of current global conditions, and are not directed against third countries. Practical cooperation, humanitarian exchanges are expanding. The bilateral trade turnover has exceeded $200 billion. Energy is undoubtedly the main field of bilateral cooperation. It has been demonstrated how vulnerable the global routes passing through unstable regions are. So against this backdrop, the importance of Russian-Chinese cooperation, energy, industrial cooperation, agriculture, science and technology is increasing, namely the Northern Sea route. And the public support of Russian-Chinese relations, it's cross-cultural years, and Putin and Xi launched the 10th thematic project for 2026-2027. It's Russian-Chinese cooperation and education, expanding student exchanges, training highly qualified specialists who will be in demand in promising bilateral cooperation projects. The rise of a tourist flow, a visa-free regime will contribute to that, and such requirements have been prolonged for 1 more year. It has been a very good news for Russian businesses and, of course, tourists who have stormed Chinese consular institutions in recent years because of the colossal interest in visiting China by the citizens of our country. And it's such a long-awaited decision that is so in demand. Now it is being prolonged, and I congratulate all of us on that. Close links between in foreign policy between Moscow and Beijing play an important stabilizing role in international affairs. We support the entirety, comprehensiveness, and interrelationship. Our coordinated work within the SCO, BRICS, APEC, and Russia supports the priorities of China's APEC chairmanship this year. The current visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin to China will further strengthen friendship between our peoples and contribute to the well-being and prosperity of our two countries. Of course, I would like to thank the official Beijing and, of course, the Chinese people for such hospitality that has been demonstrated to the Russian delegation and our entire country. It has been very colorful, very sincere, and very beautiful. Thank you very much. The second question, for many years, China and Russia, as global powers and permanent members of the UN Security Council, have fruitfully cooperated in multilateral fora, including the UN, SCO, BRICS, and the G20, making an important contribution to maintaining the post-war international order. The consensus has been reached in further advocating cooperation in global governance. How does the Russian side assess the prospects in this area? How will the two countries continue to jointly uphold international justice and, of course, global strategic stability? Yes, I already mentioned that our countries actively interact in the international fora and have signed the joint declaration on the establishment of a multipolar world and a new type of international relations, the shaping of the future world order and its key parameters. You can study that. It's available. It's about a new type of international relations which Russia and China promise to commit to adhere to and call on other members of the global community to follow their example. So I think it should be read by those who form the political agenda of their own countries, political scientists community, and of course media representatives. It's actually a document, a strategy, to put it simply, a plan that is a reply to the question, how will the world be further? Because with those crisis events we observe now, after 80 years of post-war world, is there no more opportunity for equal, mutually respectful dialogue? And those Western unclear rules-based world orders, will they dominate, but actually not dominate, but destroy what is good, what is the best, what has been accumulated by our ancestors. No, life is not over, it moves on, and Russia and China has a specific continuation. I would highlight once again that this document sets out the fundamental principles for building equal and international relations of a new type. It's an open world for inclusive cooperation, indivisible and equal security, democratization of international relations, improvement of the global governance system, as well as respect and recognition of the world's civilizational and value diversity. Thank you. Is Interfax with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. We have a question on the situation in Iran. Recently, there has been information in the media that within the framework of negotiations, Tehran agreed to transfer its enriched uranium to Russia, but as the publication had it under certain conditions. What are those conditions, and has Washington recently contacted Moscow on this issue? I would like to once again remind you our stance regarding the right of Iran and the decision how to treat this right. It can be taken only by the Iranian people themselves, and Russia intends to facilitate the agreement, and it should be reached only through negotiations. Only political, diplomatic methods taking into account the legal interests of Iran. I know that you understand that you are interested in details, but that's the part that remains behind closed doors. We move on. Is Xinhua with us? Yes. Sorry, we have some problems with the internet. Xinhua agency. Hello, Madam Zakharova. Recent public opinion polls have demonstrated that over 80% of young people in China and Russia believe that Sino-Russian relations are friendly. What do these data indicate? In your opinion, what significance does the support of friendship by young people of both countries have for bilateral relations development? Thank you. I would start with what is the obvious truth. It can be found in the statements by the President of Russia, and I'm sure that the Chinese leader also pays special attention to this, because young people are the future of every country. The quality and strength of ties between young people of the two countries is one of the key factors directly affecting the future of Russian-Chinese relations, and holding in 2014-2015 of the Russia-China youth exchanges. We are pleased, very much pleased with that, with the exceptionally positive dynamics of contacts in this area. It's the opening of the 10th cross years of Russian-Chinese cooperation and education. Education, of course, is about young people. It's about creating new opportunities for young specialists to participate in exchange programs and deepen their knowledge of the partner country. Soon, those future leaders will be responsible for preserving and exchanging the traditions of good neighborliness between the peoples of our countries. By the way, the International Youth Festival has been included in the schedule of key events, and we look forward to the visit by the Chinese youth delegation. I guarantee to you they will like it. And Russia and China try to educate the younger generation in the spirit of traditional spiritual and moral values. It's about shared values, shared ideals, and it's one more pillar of further successful development. Thank you. Thank you. Is Reuters with us? Hello, Madam Zakharova. Yes, Reuters is here. We have a question about Cuba. You have mentioned this issue some time ago, but it's about publication by Access about Cuba having purchased since 2023 of about 300 drones from Russia and intending to use them to attack U.S. facilities in Guantanamo Bay and Florida, as well as American warships. So is this information accurate? And has Cuba asked Moscow for military assistance in the event of a U.S. attack? So I'm just laughing at that, because this publication, how can this be treated? So this media outlet, let us leave it alone, not to be talking about that, but how can we treat such a publication seriously? It's dedicated allegedly to international issues that Cuba would like to attack the United States of America. Cuba for decades have been under U.S. blockade, and now the Americans just forbid them to obtain resources, even for their own money. Cuba being technically and informationally blockaded, those rings of American aggressive, so to say, care would like to attack the U.S. The author is either mad or it's an intentional provocation that needs to start shaping the public opinion. Some years ago we would have said that it's impossible because there is common sense. People have common sense, but those deep fakes, this era, such provocative treatment could have some real purpose. And the example, situation in the Persian Gulf, aggression by the US and Israel against Iran, without any basis that has been committed, and in a couple of days it has been declared by the Western media, by some of them at least, as nearly an aggression of Iran against the US and Israel, and as some of them wrote, against the countries in the region, because Iran has responded, response measures to protect itself from direct bombings and the intentional destruction of its statehood, of its political figures. We see how it's turned inside out in a second, how the information is distorted, how the facts are exchanged by lies, and it's done on the pages of traditional media. So that's how this publication should be treated. Either it's been written by an insane person, maybe had fever, a very high temperature, or it's a deliberate provocation. I see obviously here the characteristics of the second, but some characteristics of the first could also be admitted. It's a anti-Cuban information campaign in the US, forceful pressure against Havana trying to shift the blame to demonstrate some imaginary threat from Cuba. And now Cuba is characterized by the US as a terrorist state within this campaign. They could have quoted some example. Has Cuba committed anything that could be described like that? No.
But they're escalating the tensions around the Liberty Island. And the propaganda media has a role to play in this. You were interested what could be the response in case of an attack of the US on Cuba. Has Cuba asked for help, Russia for help? We have contacts with Cuba on all the issues of interest for both sides. Thank you. Thank you. Lenteru, are you with us? Good afternoon, Ms. Zakharova. We have one question today. Politico newspaper named 3 candidates of the EU for a mediator with Russia: ex-Chancellor of Germany Angela Merkel, the President of Finland Alexander Stubb, and ex-Prime Minister of Italy Mario Draghi. Merkel and Draghi refused this proposal, and there is only Stubb left. So our question is, what is the assessment of the Russian side of the candidate of Stubb as a negotiator? Well, it reminds Gaidai films. We see this, the patterns according to which this trio is being formed. If we're speaking about negotiators who could represent the countries, we're not speaking about any specific situation. We are speaking about an approach. These should be people that enjoy the trust of the people of their countries, that have never been reduced to Russophobia or nationalism, and that can contribute constructively to the negotiating process. This should be the basic characteristic of the people who would like to act as mediators or think about being mediators, or see someone as a mediator for some process. We have never been against any negotiation. We have confirmed it at the highest possible level. We were ready to work on all the differences diplomatically with our European neighbors. Well, I have one thing that I forgot to mention. Previously, I promised to share interesting information regarding Stubb, so you could understand for yourselves what is the role that he's playing. It's not the way we see him, but it's the way he sees himself. I think it was a question from Newsroom. So now I'm going to in detail speak about this topic. Stubb makes a lot of statements. We commend them at the briefings by requests of the media. The last time in February this year, there was a special sector created. The examples of the statements of the official figures and the leads of the Western countries against Russia using the language of hate. And Alexander Stubb is one of the most cited guests there. We paid attention to one thing in March, responding to the urge of the US president to allies to send their ships to the Strait of Hormuz. He urged Europe to suggest President yes, Donald Trump a deal, help an operation against Iran in return for increasing American military help to Ukraine. This is self-revealing Euromilitarism. This is the philosophy and the ideas would be difficult to be invented. Instead of providing help and settling these both conflicts, EU, in fact, if we are reading Stubb, is inciting these conflicts. and they are even escalating the situation. Humanistic principles, the Helsinki spirit that 50 years ago allowed to create the OSCE, are forgotten, are rewritten with such statements. The Russophobic revanchism and the desire for struggle are now determining the policy of the Northern Europe. On the 11th of May, in an interview to Corriere della Sera newspaper, Alexander Stubb said that Europe should start an independent dialogue with Russia. So, with one hand, they're going to ask Trump to increase the military help to Ukraine, but at the same time, they're going to present themselves as negotiators with our country. According to Stubb, if the policy of the U.S. Concerning Russia and Ukraine will not correspond to the interests of Europe, European countries should themselves have direct interaction with Moscow. As for the possibility of renewing dialogue, he mentions it once in 6 months. Another quote of the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. He said that if they hope that they are ready to speak with Russia, have negotiations with Russia, and expect that we're going to run there, no. We want to understand what are they ready to speak with us about, and after that we're going to make a decision. But we have to remember one thing. The states of the collective West, including Finland, relied on the so-called strategic defeat of Russia, and they continue to pump the Kiev regime with weapons, military equipment, and other types of assistance. They increase sanction pressure on our country. They are trying at any way to thwart the negotiating process on settling Ukrainian crisis. They're not participating in it, but they're trying to disrupt it, to impede it, hoping that at some point they will prevail. Ukraine will prevail. The leadership of Finland is remembering the times of the Second World War, when Helsinki was helping another Nazi regime to destroy Russia and to conduct genocide against the USSR peoples. They were speaking about the so-called mythical victory over the Soviet Union. Of course, we're going to give links to all of this. The support of Neo-Bandera regime in Kiev has resulted in nothing. But other Europeans and the Finnish people want to preserve their appearances, saying one thing but doing another. There is another quote. They're preparing for a prolonged conflict. Well, what negotiators are we speaking about? This policy will not create the beneficial information tonality for aggressive Ukrainian propaganda, but it will justify many billions of financing of Ukraine that Russophobic countries of Western countries are implementing to the detriment of the interests of their own countries, condoning corruption not only in Ukraine but in this Western European space. From our side, we are going to underline that we were never against a discussion of settling the crisis around Ukraine that should take into account the fundamental interests of Russia in the sphere of national security, and I highlighted the attitude of the European leaders, which you can see from the steps and the quotes of the leaders, including Alexander Stubb, cannot be seen. We see something absolutely opposing. Once again, I would like to say clearly that the goals of the special military operation stated by the Latin leadership are very clear. They have foundations, legal basis, and they will be implemented, as was many times said by the Russian leadership. Thank you. Al-Mayadin, are you here? Hello, Ms. Zakharova. We have 2 questions. You've already touched upon this topic. Let us not repeat, please, the questions that I have already answered, because we don't have much time. Well, it's a little bit different dimension, which you have not mentioned. The visit of the Russian president to China there was a declaration signed about the multipolar world, international relations of new type. Moscow and Beijing. What is the place for Middle East and Global South in this vision of the world that Moscow and Beijing are given? We are gratified to see the development and the growth of the relations with the Middle East and the Global South. We see them as an important developing pole of the international relations. As our Chinese friends, we are going to develop mutually beneficial relations with all the countries of the Global South, and we hope that the document that can be seen as a joint global initiative of Russia and China will resonate positively among all the countries, BRICS countries, Asian, Latin American countries that want to deepen their independence in the international affairs on the basis, on the principles that we mentioned in this document. And one more question, if you allow. Speaking about the results of the visit of Russia and the President of the US to China, one of the most international issues that was discussed is the situation around Iran. Can we say that there are real prospects of peaceful settlement, or there are some kind of new information that allows us to hope for possible agreement between these sides? Russia and China think that military attacks against Iran violate international law and the main norms of international relations, seriously undermining the stability in the Middle East and influence negatively the situation in many spheres of international agenda, international life, world life. We think that it's possible so that the sides involved in the conflict would return to dialogue as soon as possible, honest dialogue in order to prevent the dissemination of the conflict, propagation of the conflict. And Moscow and Beijing urge the world community to follow an objective, unbiased policy. Thank you. Let's follow. Rudaf, are you here?
And others as well. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. I have three questions. The first one is that Iran maintains that uranium enrichment is its sovereign right, while US insists on zero enrichment and no enriched uranium. From Russia's perspective, is there any middle solution to this issue? Additionally, what role can you play in preventing another war in the region that could potentially escalate further?
Российская позиция.
The Russian position on this issue has been presented many times. We have returned to it many times today. We think that the right of Iran for the use of peaceful atom, according to the 4th article of the Treaty on Non-Propagation of Nuclear Weapons, cannot be changed, cannot be limited for the benefit of some fanciful requests or policies or some words of other states. Only Iranian people can decide how to treat the uranium and enriched uranium and uranium materials they have. In order to reach mutual agreement, there are possibilities to reach mutual agreement, and all the involved sides should participate in the decision-making. We are convinced that the continuing of negotiation will reduce the conflict potential. It is necessary to reach political solution that will remove any unfounded questions around uranium program, considering all the national interests of Iran.
My second question is that a new government has recently been formed in Iraq. What are the Russia's expectations regarding cooperation with the new Iraqi government, and what areas of collaboration do you foresee?
On the 14th of May, there was a voting in the Parliament of Iraq, according to which a new government was formed, headed by Ali Zaidi. It was the end of the process of shaping the state borders. Once again, I would like to welcome our Iraq friends and to congratulate them on this. We intend to have active joint work with the new cabinet of the new Iraqi ministers in order to develop bilateral interaction in different spheres, focusing on implementing big energy projects and enhancing trade, economic, humanitarian ties. As for the 2026, we are planning to have another 11th meeting of the Russia-Iraq Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economy, Science and Technical Cooperation.
Discussions that following the events of January 2026 in North and East Syria, Damascus announced decisions allowing Kurdish regions to be governed by Kurds and permitting Kurdish children to study in the Kurdish language. However, these decisions have not yet been fully implemented. Have these issues, along with broader concerns of the minorities, been discussed in your meetings with Syrian officials?
We are closely following the events in the Syrian Arab Republic, where traditionally pay attention to the topic of relations between ethnic and regional groups forming the Syrian people. We are convinced that the way for sustainable stabilization in the northeast of Syria and in this country as a whole goes through the wide dialogue aimed at strengthening national unity, consent, considering interests of representatives of all ethnic and religious groups of Syrian community, including the Kurds. We said many times we need to strictly respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. And the leadership of Syria follows the same approach, and we support the attitude of the authorities of the country and the personally President Sharia to ensure the rights of all citizens independently of their nationality or religion. And guiding by our principal position on this issue, we welcomed the adoption of the presidential decree, decree number 13 of the 16th of January 2026. It contains important provisions guaranteeing the rights of Kurds. We hope that the implementation agreed by the sides will contribute for successful reintegration of northeastern region of the Syrian Arab Republic to the common legal space of the state and the long-term normalization of the situation in this part of the country and in Syria as a whole.
Maria Zakharova, for your responses. Hope you will stay safe. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. You too. Let's follow Sada Al-Rus. My name is Hijda Khandani. I'm from the Pakistani media. Allow me to ask several questions. Last week in the Kazan Forum, the representatives of dozens of the Islamic countries took part. What are the key political, economic, humanitarian signals, according to the Foreign Ministry, Moscow could convey through this platform to its partners in the Islamic world? And what is the assessment of the Foreign Ministry of the scale of the international meaning of Kazan Forum? Can we speak today that the forum has become one of the leading platforms for interaction of Russia with the Islamic world and an important element of shaping multipolar system of international cooperation? From the 12th to the 17th of May in Kazan, the 18th International Economic Forum Russia-Islamic World Kazan Forum was held, confirming its status of the key dialogue platform where the common approaches are being shaped, as well as the specific steps to develop relations of Russia with the countries of Islamic world. Our interaction with Muslim states demonstrates stable growth, even in the conditions of global turbulence. Today, the IC represent the third of the external trade of Russia. The number of participants of the forum increases every year, which demonstrates the growing interest of the Muslim community to widen ties with us in trade, economy, investment, financing, humanitarian spheres. More than 100 countries were represented. There was a meeting of the Group of Strategic Vision, the meeting of the Ministers of Culture of Islamic countries, different expositions, conferences, more than around 10,000 people participated in it. More than 250 were eminent guests. And there were more than 500 representatives of the media. And this year, forum has reached a record according to the effectiveness. More than 160 agreements and memos were signed. The results show that the countries of Islamic civilization are our reliable partners in ensuring security, stability, solving economic tasks on the regional and global level. We're united by common approaches in order to form just, sustainable, multipolar world order on the basis of the UN Charter principles, respecting interests of each other. That is why we're interested in further development and enhancing such ties.
Да, конечно.
If you allow me the second question. In recent weeks, the debate around reforming international financial institutions has intensified. The question is about whether Russia supports the idea of creating alternative global financial mechanisms free from Western influence. You know, we will prepare today and we will publish a special material on this, and we will send it to you. Thank you. Thank you. Is Союзный channel with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. Союзный channel. Recently, it has been reported about gradually allowing Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete fully in Olympic competitions, and will any steps be taken to ensure this decision extended to all athletes? So we have had such a phrase that is commonplace when athletes and trainers and teams in all sports, they are banned. Such a powerhouse that for decades has developed sports in its country and helping to do that to those who is interested in this, where sports is honored not only as a means to earn money, but as a healthy way of living, as a part of culture, where classes at school are called physical culture, such a powerhouse, they are trying to ban it. Those are characteristics of their own crisis. I think there are some rationally thinking forces who understand that Russia is mobilizing, it's becoming stronger, and using those challenges to become more powerful. Because such things they are committing, they kill themselves, they kill global sports. Probably they do not care about global sports, but it's harmful to themselves. They have started to realize that. Anyway, more and more international federations are allowing Russian athletes without any restrictions. It's a positive dynamics and motivates our athletes to achieve new feats. It's coming back to not new normality, but to normal normality. This tendency should continue in the near future. All the restrictions should be lifted. It's an imperative, because those restrictions have been illegal and immoral. I would repeat, major international competition without participation of Russian athletes cannot be considered major international competitions, taking into account the history, the sports history of our country and its input into global sports and Olympic movement. And one more issue, there is no competition, no rivalry. If they need to award medals to themselves, they can do that. And do not call that in global sports. Global sports is about competition, fair competition according to the rules. Thank you. We move on. Mezentsev School of Journalism. Dear colleagues, and I will reply individually. Yes, hello, I'm here. Madam Zakharova, I have two questions to you. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan will not attend the EAU summit in Astana, and he will be represented by a deputy prime minister instead. How is this gesture viewed in Moscow, and how will contacts be maintained if Armenia is totally Europeanized? Yes, we have officially received a notification that Nikol Pashinyan will not be able to attend and be represented by